The biggest mistake you can make as a man in your dating and your relationship life is to ignore the following two concepts. Today I will share two ideas with you that are insanely valuable. If you ignore these ideas, you will never find the right girlfriend or wife, and you will miss out on a tremendous amount of happiness and energy. The first one is momentum. You know that when you're starting anything new in life, be that in your career, your business, or your fitness, in the beginning, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of energy to get the metaphorical ball up the hill. But once it crosses the hill, it starts rolling by itself. Once you've gathered momentum, the momentum itself will carry you. The problem is you haven't gathered enough momentum in your dating and your relationship life. You haven't made enough positive reference experiences throughout your dating life, or at least recently, maybe 20 years ago, but not recently. So there's nothing that's pushing you, so everything feels heavy. Maybe you're on dating apps, but you're not getting the right types of matches. Maybe conversations fizzle out. Maybe you go on dates with the wrong women. Maybe you're not getting enough dates. It feels frustrating. It feels heavy. You need more wins. How do you do that? How do you create momentum? How do you create this most important source of fuel? In order to get to that point, you have to first take a lot of action. Unfortunately, to create a lot of momentum, you have to take a lot of action. If you want to get momentum in the gym, for example, you have to start going 3 times a week, every second day. And if you haven't done any type of workouts at all, it'll feel very heavy. But what happens after 2 to 3 months of working out every single week? It feels like it's pulling you to the gym. It's very little conscious effort. Yeah, there are times where you're tired and it's mental fortitude and it's resilience and you actually have to rely on discipline for sure. But once the momentum is there, it's actually easy. Now, you haven't taken enough action regarding dating apps, Instagram, or in-person approaches that you have no pull energy. Nothing is pulling you. So how can you get yourself to take that massive action initially? 5 to 8 hours a week. You have to change your mental and your emotional state, because it's very difficult to just ignore your emotions. Pop psychology these days will tell you, just ignore your emotions, just do what's right. As a man, it's your duty to do what's right. And that's true if the severity of the negative emotions haven't surpassed a certain threshold. We've all had it where we feel so angry, so sad, so stressed, so frustrated, so down, so depressed that we can't do the thing. We can't get ourselves to do the thing. So you first have to learn to make yourself feel like doing it. How do you do that? Well, you change what you focus on, you change your inner dialogue, and you change your physiology. And then you change the systematic elements in your life. The the internal components, we've talked about at length in this channel. I'm going to touch on that later here today. But there's also a systemic component. Gunther Schmidt, one of Germany's best psychologists, he teaches something called hypnosystemic therapy, which basically just means there's an internal component as well as a systematic external component to your experience, which is something you create at any given point in time. I'm going to come back to momentum in a minute, because one of the most powerful ingredients for your energy, how you feel, your levels of confidence, is social contact. Johann Hari wrote a book called Lost Connections, The Real Causes for Anxiety and Depression. And the number one reason is a lack of quality social contact. The number one reason men feel bad is because you're not spending enough time with quality male friends. But David, on the weekend, 3 or 4 hours, it's not enough. All you do during the week is work and gym, and at some point you eat and you sleep. And that's it. First of all, where on earth are you supposed to find the right girlfriend or wife? Second of all, you're ignoring the basic biological operating mechanisms under which your brain functions. Your brain was shaped into its current functioning form a couple of 100,000 years ago when we were living in tribes of 200 to 300 people. You had a tribe of 100 to 200 men around you at all times. You were never meant to be alone. And what happened to the men who were sent into exile because they misbehaved or they tried to challenge the king? That's, by the way, why you're worried about what people think of you and you're worried about rejection in the first place. Those who were sent into exile, well, they died because you will get ended by other animals. Other tribes are going to come and hunt you. You will lose the chance to pass on your genetics to female members of the tribe. You know it's ended. That's it. So you really need to be in the tribe, and your brain realized that. That's why when you're isolated for too long, your brain increases cortisol. Your brain actually makes you more depressed if you're too far, too long away from the tribe. It doesn't give you these negative emotions to punish you. Remember, pain is supposed to move you into action. It is not supposed to make you suffer. It's giving you that as a signal to get back into social contact. The number one reason is a lack of quality social contact. If you don't spend enough time with quality male friends, you will feel depressed. It's a natural fact, and it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how good your life is on the outside. If you're not spending enough time around men who are truly masculine, who are really confident, who want to see you win, it is impossible for you to feel happy. We've all had those brokey days where you didn't have any money, but you were hanging out with your boys, and everything was awesome. You were having the best time of your life. You were out, going for a swim, you're playing football, basketball. You had no money. All you were doing is maybe you were watching a couple of videos, maybe you were out in nature, you were shooting the shit, maybe you were talking to girls, and you felt perfectly happy, didn't you? In that moment, you had no problems, right? Now you might say, isn't that a coping mechanism? Am I not just ignoring my problems? No, it's not just that you're ignoring problems. You're present to the moment. You are engaged with life. When you engage with life, and that largely requires social contact, you will feel alive. You will feel the way you're supposed to feel. There is nothing wrong with you if you don't feel as alive as you'd want to be, even if you're crushing it in your career, even if you're doing well in your business. If you don't spend enough time with quality male friends every single week, you will not feel as alive and confident as you otherwise could. Where do you find these people? In the gym, in personal development groups, personal development seminars. Maybe you go and run a high rocks. Maybe you do, I was going to say Pilates, but maybe you're not going to find those types of men, but maybe you will. Maybe yoga. Maybe you just got to get out of the house. You might say, David, I work so much. There, what do you do on the weekend? Is it not one of the most important outcomes you can achieve in your life? Happiness? Is it not one of the most important things you can pursue? Because you realize having the external success, that's not what's going to fulfill you. Yes, you need a goal. You need the next step because progress equals happiness. But if you're not enjoying the journey, then what is it all for? You're not going to take anything with you anyway. You'll take nothing with you except for the experiences you've made. And that's why I care about my job, by the way, because I'm going to let Elon worry about populating Mars. What I care about is over the next 100 years, did I contribute to people's happiness and did I reduce unnecessary suffering? I've suffered a lot with my ex-wife. When I didn't have these tools to control my mental and emotional state, to understand the hypno as well as the systemic elements, I was suffering. I went through a really, really hard time. And I would rather have you not experience these unnecessary levels of suffering. Because most of the levels of suffering that you're currently experiencing are completely unnecessary. Pain happens, but suffering is optional. You are staying in a disempowered mental and emotional state for far too long. So you have to schedule time in your calendar for social contact. If you don't schedule social contact with quality male friends in your calendar, there is no chance in hell you'll be as confident and as happy as you could possibly be. And thereby, the probability gets reduced that you'll perform well on the date, that you'll communicate effectively on the date. Yes, you could theoretically be a great communicator without having that, but it increases the probability because it boosts your levels of energy. And also, you just won't get the most out of life. Because what is it all for if you don't have anybody to share it with? Yes, you want to have an amazing woman by your side, but having a tribe, a couple of quality male friends, not just spread across the UK or the US, but locally in your city that you can see on a weekly basis. If you don't have that, you're robbing yourself of the biggest source of life's happiness that you could possibly have, other than having a beautiful woman and beautiful kids by your side and in your house. Now, the reason social contact matters as well is because it changes energy levels and it'll make it easier for you to take the massive action that's required to then gather momentum, to then have the momentum carry you, to then commit to a process of 3 to 11 months or 4 or 3 or 10 or whatever to find the right girlfriend or wife. If you want to not get too shaken because a date didn't go the way you wanted it to, because she didn't text you back, if you don't want that to phase you at all, if you want to say, cool, no issue, yes, you can get a coach, you can get me to help you with that if you want to, but you can also just spend time with quality male friends. If you would tonight have your best friends over at your place and you play some PlayStation, you smoke a cigar, you just spend time together, and some girl were to cancel your date this week, how upset would you be? Probably not that much. But if you're alone in your house or in your apartment by yourself, doesn't it hurt so much more? Of course it does. Why? Because we have a need for love and connection. We as human beings have 6 different needs, Tony Robbins says: certainty, variety, significance, love and connection, growth and contribution. And one of the most important ones is love and connection. Tony says we're going to sacrifice our values to meet our needs. My value might be I want to be respected in a relationship. My value might be I want to have freedom and autonomy in a relationship. But I'm going to sacrifice that if I don't believe unconsciously that my need for love and connection will be met. If I lose this person, I'll never find someone like her. That was the fear that I had with my ex-wife. That's why I stayed in that relationship far too long. You've probably stayed in relationships far too long, even though part of you knew it wasn't right. Why? Because you were afraid of losing her, because you unconsciously believed that your need for love and connection wasn't going to be met, and it threatened your emotional stability and your well-being. When you outsource and you diversify the sources that meet your need for love and connection, you're less dependent on every single one of them. You need a greater social network. That will allow you to take more action in your dating and your relationship life. Because guess what? You're not going to find your wife tomorrow. You may, but to be honest, given the fact that you have blind spots in your communication, you'll probably still find a way to mess it up. It'll take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 7. It's not going to take years, but it'll take some amounts of time, some months of time of dedicated effort of getting more quality dates with dating apps, with Instagram, with in-person approaches, at least one of those channels, to then refine your communication skills, to then choose the right girlfriend or wife. It is a process. It works every single time. It never not works. I have never seen it over the last 5 or 6 years of coaching 400 men from 40 different countries, that if somebody truly dedicates themselves, is open to feedback, is coachable, takes a lot of action, that they don't find a beautiful wife or girlfriend, whether you want to sign that paper or not. I've never seen it. If you actually give it your best. But what's stopping you from giving it your best? Emotions, setback. You haven't learned to discipline your disappointment, as Tony calls it. Oh, the one date doesn't go well. And since you only have a date a month and you're worried that you're not going to have any more for the next month or 2, it shakes you up because you're not coming from abundance. You need to create momentum so that it'll be easy for you to introduce yourself. You've never even realized what true social flow looks like. True social flow of being able to start conversations, even if you're introverted, doesn't mean you have to do that for 8 hours a day. It could be an hour and a half a day, and introducing yourself here, introducing yourself there, feeling at home in the world, having a quick interaction with the Uber driver, having a quick interaction with a lady at the reception, not even because you're trying to hit on her, just because you want to make her feel good and you want to exchange some positivity. And then also you see somebody and you express intent, because the times you do see somebody that you want to get to know, somebody you're intimately interested in, you do let her know that that's what your intention is. You're not trying to weasel your way into the friend zone. You're very clear with what your intention is, and then you let her decide whether she wants to opt in or opt out. But to get to the point where you have so many options, such a level of abundance, to choose a really quality wife from, who has the same values, matching personality, somebody that you have intellectual compatibility with, somebody you're physically attracted to, you will have to take action. It's not 25 hours a week. It's not an MBA program, trust me, but it is something that requires leaving your comfort zone temporarily. But here's the good news. Brad Yates, one of my first personal development teachers, he used to say that once you leave your comfort zone, eventually you expand your comfort zone. Because if I were to tell you that you have to do something for the next 6 months that's uncomfortable, you're not going to want to do that. But you only do it for a day or 2, a couple hours, a couple of minutes. And then once you've introduced yourself, this is now possible. The reason you have approach anxiety is because your brain thinks you're gonna die if you do it. If I were to ask you to approach somebody right now who's truly physically attractive, you might say, oh, I'm actually not able to do that because she's super attractive. But if I were to ask you to talk to somebody who's maybe a 2 out of 10, somebody you're not that physically attracted to, then you might say, well, actually easy. Did you watch Lord of the Rings? Gollum? If there was somebody who looked like that, how much approach anxiety would you feel then? Very little. The mental error you make, the mental error a lot of very intelligent men make every single day is they think They have to be able to introduce themselves to somebody really attractive right here, right now. You can't. Subjectively, you're not able to do that at this point in time. What you have to be able to do is you have to be willing to start with somebody you're not that attracted to and then work your way up. Progressive desensitization works every single time. It works every time because we can learn things step by step. You weren't able to do it at some point in the past, but you will be able to do it if the incremental increase of difficulty is very marginal. Now, if you jump to a level where you say, wow, she's super attractive, yeah, then you're going to feel a level of nervousness that will make it impossible for you to act because subjectivity is everything. But if you go step by step and you start with somebody that is not that attractive and you go a little bit more, a little bit higher, you'll be able to do it. It works every single time. It never not works. It's a beautiful process, but most people won't do it. You probably won't. Now, you might, but a lot of people won't. Now, you can find somebody just with dating apps, just with Instagram, that's fine. But the biggest sense of transformation in terms of your character as a man and your levels of confidence will come from you introducing yourself in everyday scenarios. Doesn't mean you have to go to clubs. You're not going to find your wife in clubs. Can it be certain bars that are nicer? Fine. That doesn't mean you have to drink, by the way. I don't drink. I don't take any drugs. I recommend you don't drink either at all, or at least reduce alcohol heavily. But if you don't do that, what are you going to be able to teach your son someday? If you can't even do it yourself, what are you going to teach your son? Because most people, they simply teach hearsay. They tell people what they've read in a magazine, but it doesn't come from actual experience. After the separation from my ex-wife, many years ago, I went on my own journey and I got a lot of experience. And I worked on my communication skills and I went to personal development seminars now for 15 years or whatever it is. And what I'm teaching you comes from experience. I've been with my fiance, Fernanda, for 5.5 years. She's amazing. She's got a master's degree from one of the best universities in Brazil. Super loving, super hot, super kind, super caring. There's no perfect relationship. Perfect doesn't exist. But it's pretty fucking high up here. So everything I say doesn't just come from coaching hundreds of clients and creating a countless amount of beautiful relationships or helping men co-create that, but also from my own experience. There's not a single question you could ask me in the realm of dating and relationships that I haven't answered and solved for clients tens of times, dozens of times, hundreds of times. Because we as human beings are special. But our problems aren't special. Any problem you could possibly have in the realm of dating and relationships or personal development, I have solved. Somebody has solved your shoulder pain, your back pain. There's solutions for all of it. Yeah, but my knee pain, there's a guy called Knees Over Toes guy. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast. That's his expertise. There is a solution for everything. But for you to be able to get out there, to find the how, you have to manage your mental and emotional state on a day-to-day basis. And yes, there's an internal component. Go to my YouTube channel, which you're probably watching this on, and watch the video Inner Game Mastery. Type it in, Inner Game Mastery. It's a 50-minute video that goes into quite a level of depth and that gives you very practical strategies on how to do that. But the single most important ingredient for managing your mental and your emotional state, for managing your energy levels, your confidence, that will allow you to take action to create a momentum is social contact. Make it a goal for yourself for the next couple of months, for the next 6 months, for 2025, to get 2 new quality male best friends. You can find 2 new quality male best friends in the next 3 to 9 months, and you can 3x your levels of happiness. Mark my words, it's possible. But you have to make it a priority. Nothing else is as important as your happiness. Yes, finances matter. Yes, health matters. But you can do that alongside. It doesn't take that much time. It's a high leverage activity. If you want me to help you personally find the right girlfriend or wife, if you're a man with a successful career or your own business, click the link below, apply for a free initial consultation. For everybody else, go check out some of the other videos we have here on my YouTube channel, especially the one on Inner Game Mastery. Enjoy.